Hey, everybody. It's Saturday. Well, it's every other Saturday, today being the 19th of February, and you are live with Crypto Connoisseurs with Kevin, that's me, and Jason, who's, I don't know what side of the screen might be on for you. He's on this side of the screen for me. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Quick intro about myself. My name is Kevin Merkel. I am the CEO and founder of a crypto exchange called CoinMetro, among other things. And I like to talk about crypto stuff, and so does Jason. So I'll let Jason introduce himself, and we'll jump right into it.
Yeah, my name is Jason Fernandez, co-founder over at Adlunum. And yeah, like Kevin, love chatting all things crypto, and can't wait to get into today's discussion. Let's take it away.
Awesome. We got 8 topics today. I don't know if we're going to make them all in 30 minutes, but we're going to try. So here we go. First one coming up. Canada's terrorist financing rules now covering crypto. So Jason Trudeau now is the public enemy number one, apparently, in crypto. So Jason, what do you have you read these headlines? What do you think?
Yeah, I've been watching kind of what's going on. It's really troublesome. I mean, the whole idea of crypto in the first place is sort of to as a foil against this sort of government overreach, right? I mean, there was I think Greece, for example, they went in and took a bunch of people's money right out of their bank accounts, and that was supposed to be a use case for crypto. And everybody that moved over to crypto are in Canada, especially now, are not feeling super secure. I mean, Kraken has just come out and said that they can't protect their users against Canada just coming in and grabbing their crypto. So it's like, even if you have crypto, it then starts the question is, how are you storing it? Is that on a decentralized exchange? And I mean, is that on a decentralized wallet that you're custodying the funds, or whether it's on a centralized exchange where, again, somebody can just come in and take it? It's almost like the bank then, right? It's almost like what happened in Greece, if you can just come in and take money out of somebody's account. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, obviously, I think the law, aside from crypto, just him enacting this provision, which has never been enacted before, for basically civil disobedience. So there's a convoy that's obviously causing a lot of economic issues because they're blocking borders and stuff. But it is a protest, which I'm pretty sure is covered under Canadian law. So it's civil disobedience, and in this provision, which again has never been enacted, which you would think would be enacted for some type of major criminal organization or something along those lines, gets enacted because a bunch of Canadians don't like mask mandates. That's kind of crazy to me. I think that's the craziest part. But when it comes to crypto, there was mention that it includes digital assets. I don't think we've seen precedents yet. So we haven't seen any crypto exchange get some type of cease and, some order to freeze assets. And you mentioned decentralization. At the end of the day, most people, if the super crypto files may never go to fiat, right? They may always be in the crypto realm, moving wrapped ETH and Ether and wrap this, wrap that, and stable coins and everything. But most people end up at fiat at some point. So the crazy thing about that is decentralized wallets and everything else may still not help you. If somebody really wants to track down your crypto or get their hands on it, they eventually they probably could. But I think they overstepped their boundaries. I think the media might also be overstepping boundaries a bit, simply because if you look at the news, most of the money they're trying to get was on crowdfunding platforms. There's a couple like GoFundMe pages or something where millions were raised. I haven't heard about, there's probably BTC donations somewhere. I don't know. I didn't hear about that specifically, but anyway, like to see how this pans out. Like Jesse Powell said at Kraken, I run a centralized exchange. We are registered at FinTrack in Canada. If we got a letter from a court, a judge, that said that we needed to freeze a certain wallet, well, guess what? We got to freeze that wallet. I mean, it's not because we want to. But I haven't seen that happen yet. So until that happens, I'm not as worried. But it is worrying that just the thing was enacted in the first place.
But it's crazy because a lot of places are actually trying to get funds. A lot of protest movements and sort of civil disobedience movements are trying to get funds via crypto. So it hasn't happened yet. It's literally a really short amount of time before it does.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe next time we're on the show, we're gonna have something else to talk about. So next one on the block, U.S. Senate banking chief claims big crypto companies are desperate. This comes off the back of those Super Bowl ads. And apparently because a company's able to spend a few million or several million on an ad makes them desperate. So I don't know, Jason, what do you think about that?
No, listen, I think that's a bit rich, especially because what about the banking system? Like most of the fraud is conducted on U.S. dollars for that matter. Not to mention banks themselves, notorious about doing HSBC was fined for money laundering. This other bank, skipping my mind, where it was fined $250 million for money laundering. They've been known to take sacks of cash from Mexican drug lords. This in 2012. This was a huge scandal. Literally, drug lords, and got away with paying a little bit of fine. Not to mention, they've done shady things. Like I think Wells Fargo was busted for making a whole bunch of accounts without asking people's permission, to increase the number of accounts that they had and have move money around and stuff. I mean, that's the amount of fraud that happens in the general banking system, far exceeds anything that ever happens on crypto. Chain Analysis said something like 8 billion versus 800 billion or trillion or something like that. A couple trillion and 800 billion. So, it's really rich coming from somebody, that's sort of probably in the employ of some degree of banking, lobby or something like that.
Yeah, it's that there was it's kind of like China banning crypto every other Thursday or something. This is like this narrative of crypto being used for criminal activity. It has been around since 2010 or so, and it just keeps kind of coming back. The funny thing is it doesn't evolve. You would think that the argument would get a little better. It doesn't. It actually gets stupider. My favorite line has to be from this guy, this U.S. senator. The fact that these companies felt the need to advertise at all is a bit of a giveaway about one of the major claims. If this were actually meant to be currency, why would they need to buy ads? So first of all, most crypto aren't currencies. In fact, I would argue none of them are, but whatever, you can call them cryptocurrencies if you want. But the fact that a company needs to advertise means they're a scam. That's basically what he said. I don't know. I'm hoping that this was an off-the-cuff remark, where he didn't actually write this down, or somebody wrote this down for him. He read it and was like, "That's a good one," and then decided, to jump in and lead with that one because it's a pretty stupid comment. But yeah, look, to be fair and to be honest, Silk Road was probably the use case for 80 to 85% of Bitcoin in circulation back in 2009-10. That's facts. But this isn't 2009 and 10. The market's now worth trillions, nowhere near even half of a 1% of it is tied anywhere near to criminal activity. I guess if you want to call civil disobedience criminal activity, maybe it's slightly higher, but it's definitely nowhere near. Yeah, I think there's something more than $1 trillion in paper currency actually connected to criminal activity at any one point in time. And so that's not the entire market. At some point, a year or so ago, that was the entire crypto market or more. Mm-hmm. Now it's not, but still, it's massively. There's such a massive difference in terms of percentage of currency in circulation that's tied to criminal activity. So if you're a company and you advertise, especially at the Super Bowl, you're a fraud. Just so everybody knows, next time you watch Super Bowl, don't get caught up.
You would think that it. You would think that it implies that crypto has arrived. Yeah. You have Super Bowl and they have like a bunch of ads on crypto. This is like mainstream now. Yeah. But no, it's because of these ads. That means they're desperate.
Yeah, that means Miller Lite, Coors, Budweiser, all frauds, all trying to do something terrible to you. Stop buying. But actually, you should probably stop buying Budweiser. That's probably not the worst thing to do. IMF, next one up. Crypto is no match for well-designed central bank digital currencies. So, what do you think about that one, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, it's a bit disingenuous because you really have to think about like why somebody would be creating, like, what is the purpose of whatever this cryptocurrency is, right? Like, Bitcoin has a very specific purpose, comes from like very libertarian ideals. It's you know how they say it's like, what is the intention behind it? And we look at USDT. USDT is essentially selling convenience, basically, right? Like, but what is why would a government be doing that? For tracking. Like that's what they're doing. It's not because they're like, oh, hey, let's make this really convenient for a bunch of people. You know, they're using it to track people. If you look at the I watched a program the other day about like China's digital currency and what they're putting together, and it's like really insane. It's like they said, hey, it's like we looked at blockchain, we were like, oh, this is amazing. It's like freeing and everything. And then the government's looked at blockchain was like, oh, this is amazing. We can track all the money now. We can track exactly where it goes and what people buy, and you know, and that's madness. It's a level of control I think that like is dystopian, you know, in scope. I like the whole concept of CBDCs, and especially how they're being implemented these days. It's for the purpose of like creating a mass surveillance state, right? And so I think you have to look at the intention behind the crypto and what is it trying to achieve. I mean, that's what we do anyway when we make investments and stuff. We're trying to see like what the crypto is trying to achieve. When we're looking at US, you know, a US CBDC, or even one out of India or China, what's the purpose of that? We all know what that is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even I think this, what's happening in Ukraine and obviously similar situations around the world, make me think that, because I you know, I remember going back 3-4 years ago, talking to regulators, going to talk to the regulators in several different countries. And up to that point, at least publicly, they hadn't said anything good about, you know, well, they started to say good things about blockchain, but tried to say that crypto and blockchain were innately kind of completely different things, right? But it was inevitable, and I remember even saying this to a regulator, it's inevitable that you guys are going to turn around and like this at some point, because, you know, it's like if every criminal used a credit card. I mean, you can see exactly where they are, what they're doing. You can turn it off, turn it on. And yeah, eventually they got there. I think they may have been there quite sooner than that. They just didn't make it a public narrative. But the IMF, man, what you know, imagine most wars are based on money. So whether it's sanctions, they get cut off from the banking system, they can't do this. Most wars, before they're even physical wars, start with monetary wars, you know, money wars. If everything's digital, imagine how easy it will be for the powers that be, US, UK, basically NATO, to just shut off people's money supply all around the world, literally. Because if everybody's on some type of digital currency, especially when it's centralized, all they got to do is cyber attack the nodes of that centralized digital currency, and everybody's just screwed. There's no money.
Well, if you look see what happened to Afghanistan, right? They froze all these funds, and you know, now that the country is doing really poorly, what they're trying to do is they're going to split it in half. Like with the money that was in the Federal Reserve, they're going to split it in half. Half is going to go to a victims fund, and the other half is going to go to. Which I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it's kind of mind blowing that somebody can do it. It's like, okay, hey, we have some of your money. We're going to split it. This other guy is mad at you. We're just going to give that to him. And then we're gonna give you the balance, like.
And not even that. Where did they catch Bin Laden? I mean, where did they catch the supposed mastermind? You know, 9/11 and all that other thing. I'm pretty sure it wasn't. He wasn't even. He's not even from Afghanistan. I mean, Afghanistan had literally no tie to what they're giving money for. Again, I'm glad victims are getting money, but that's kind of like me getting convicted of some crime and them taking your money and paying my victims with it.
Like, because you think about it, where's that money supposed to be going? It's supposed to be going to aid. I mean, the whole idea of sending any money there at all is because it's going to aid. So you have to wonder whether, like, who is better off, some starving, you know, Afghan kid in a famine, or you know, some fairly comfortable person currently in New York. Now, again, there is a whole thing about compensation again, but you're taking money again from those broke people. And giving these guys over in New York.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, the world never works as it should. I think my last comment on this would just be, you know, I think to me, CBDCs are fine as long as we have the option. If you have an option to choose between a digital currency run by the government, which for certain things, let's say most things throughout your daily life is probably fine, who cares? But you also have an option to have these private issued currencies that you can use as well. Then, to be honest, I don't see a major issue. I think they're not seeing what the benefit of crypto is in general to most people. Because, CBDCs might be more secure and better run, or whatever, whatever salesmanship they want to throw behind it. And they may be right, but the one thing they don't have is that they're not private. And I don't mean private by like Monero private. I mean that they're not decentralized and not run by the government. And so that's why most people ended up going into crypto, is because of those, those ideals, not because, oh my God, I hope this is secure enough. And, I hope the government runs this one day so they can do it better. The government never does anything better. Private sector always beats the government. Right?
It's a bit of the fox, guarding the henhouse type thing. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, these are the whole, with Tether, it's like, is this fully collateralized? Right, like that's the question. Do they really have the money? And then there was that whole audit and everything. But in the bank, they just inventing it. Like it's literally coming out of thin air.
Slightly fractionally reserved, just slightly. So SEC warns against interest-bearing crypto accounts, says they're riskier than bank deposits. Well, what do you think, Jason?
Yeah. So I think this is sort of like the dying breath of the banking industry, sort of going, no, come back to us. I think DeFi is blowing things up. You have these smart contracts. Arguably, banks close all the time. Things go wrong in India, especially. Like, you have banking closures all the time. People lose money. Not in the US, you're insured to 150K. I think is what it is. Like in India, I think it's like $2,000. So people lose a lot of money when banks close, and that happens all the time. But so they're trying to say that it's risky. Well, what if it's protected with a smart contract? It's arguably safer, like many times safer, where you could take the money, and in some of these cases it's over collateralized. Like the lending that happens is over collateralized, and so and they're all governed by smart contracts, and they have these complex mechanisms that basically take over on their own. And I would argue that maybe a really well audited smart contract is 10 times more secure than, or 100 times more secure than trusting your money with the bank and hoping that they handle the deposits and everything right, and don't shut down and take away your money.
Yeah, exactly. Look, every financial company normally has to have inside of their policy documents a corruption policy or a coercion policy. Why? Well, because people are corrupt and they can get coerced. And even crypto companies have them. We have them. It's kind of like, if how do you protect from people having access to lots of money? And obviously, like you said, in crypto, well, there's a lot of ways to protect against that, or blockchain in general with smart contracts and the like, that you can't really do in the real world. You can have 2FA and 4FA and 4 people signing signatures, but if 4 people collude together to sign a signature at a bank behind closed doors, all in the same room, well, they can still steal. Yeah, exactly. So I'm just reading through. These are the risks that the SEC outlined, specifically related to crypto. Let's see if any of them match with risks that also exist in the banking system. So these are the risks. So activities basically in crypto are subject to these risks. Volatility and liquidity. Well, if you're talking, they're kind of taking what would be a tradable asset versus, and they're comparing it to, you can trade the US dollar, but they're comparing it to a currency that people generally use. So they're, I would say, right on the volatility side, not necessarily for the right reasons. Liquidity, not really. How many times have we seen bank runs across the world where there's no liquidity to get your money out of the bank? That they limit you. I think Cyprus, they limit 200 euros a day. That's it. 50 euros a day, 20 euros a day. You can't take out more. That sounds like a liquidity problem to me.
India did that too with during demonetization. Basically, they made it to where you couldn't take out more than like $20 or something a day.
Yeah, exactly. So then the company holding your crypto assets may go bankrupt. The bank holding your money may also, by the way, go bankrupt. Changes in regulation. Yeah, that doesn't happen at banks. Potential fraud. Oh, well, come on, Jason. We all know that stuff that happened to Wells Fargo wasn't fraud. They were just trying to be nice and open accounts for you so you didn't have to do it yourself. Yeah, that's not fraud. Technical glitches, which obviously, I don't know about you, but my banking software is probably the best user experience I've ever used. Ever. No technical glitches there. No way to potentially lose money at a bank. Security breaches, again. When's that ever happened at a bank? I think we'd have to think long and hard about the last security breach that happened at a bank. And malware, which again, the banking system is pretty digital now as is, right? Most people don't go to the bank. You're not going to have probably malware when you go to the teller and say, I need $100 and they hand it to you.
Right.
Well, maybe, but online.
Which would target fiat and crypto alike.
Exactly. So pretty much everything they outlined also happens at banks and actually happens probably more at banks. Well, for the amount of money, absolutely happens more at banks than it happens in crypto. That's for sure. So yeah, anyway, let's go to the next one. Let's see what we got. Spanish civil guards bust organization dedicated to laundering money with crypto. Now we get to talk about how sometimes this does happen, I guess. So what do you think, Jason?
I mean, at first, I think the title is kind of funny. I mean, that they're dedicated to laundering money with crypto. It's like, oh, this is our mission. But anyways, I mean, first of all, it's interesting that they managed to seize all these cold wallets and get a hold of all them. But we know that this is a much bigger problem with fiat than it's ever been with crypto, right? Like I mentioned earlier, the chain analysis one, it's like $8.6 billion were laundered using crypto, whereas you have 800 billion and 2 trillion estimated to have been laundered through fiat methods. So I mean, it's clearly not comparable. But yeah, I mean, it's these are the kind of stories that get a lot of press, and it's ultimately it's like clickbait, right? That's what it comes down to. It's like, what are people going to read? Let's create this controversy, and unfortunately, oftentimes crypto is at the recipient end of that. I mean, we know in India this happens all the time, right? Like, so you'll have the exact same articles the exact same news every week. They'll put it out, like they'll reinterpret it and they'll put it out like it's like news, and everybody's like, "Oh, God, they're going to ban crypto. They're going to ban crypto," and it's the same. Nothing has happened from the government, like literally zero. But somebody has put out an article.
Yeah. I think I'm just reading this, they seize, yes, cold wallets. So I'm assuming they seize like Ledger wallets or, Tether wallets. It probably wasn't the most, that doesn't mean they seize the assets on the cold wallet, right? That just means they have the physical cold wallet, whatever that means, potentially physical, with more than €1 million. Now, €1 million isn't a small amount of money, but in terms of, headlines for seizing money from, criminal organizations, $1 million is like, who kind of cares?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, because I've had this conversation with people, and like, well, the financial world, the traditional financial world is so much bigger. And so, so let's look at ratios, even with a ratio, even if it was 10 billion laundered through crypto, and we have roughly a 2 trillion market cap. Well, that's, what's that? 200 times, or 1/200th of the total market cap. And 2 trillion, if we go to the high level, 2 trillion of US dollars. This is now, if we're talking about physical currency, the actual currency that exists, I think there's like 13 trillion that exist in physical currency. This is just US dollars around the world. It's 11 to 13. I don't know what the current number is. So that's, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth. That's quite the
small,
difference.
Really very large amount, right? In comparison.
Yeah. It's massive, absolutely massive. So again, yeah,
and it's disingenuous to not give you that scale when you're reading the article. It kind of gives you like right there. It tells you the slant of that article just by virtue of not giving you the relevant context.
Exactly, and you don't see articles like this when they seize $1 million in cash, because it's just not enough. People aren't going to care. They're going to be like, yeah. Lots of people have millions, but when it's crypto, this could have been probably 200,000. It still would have made the news. Whereas if they have to seize, maybe 10, 20, 50, 100 million worth of cash before anybody really cares. So yeah, I think they're just, like I said, most of these things are kind of, you can tell when an industry is getting real close to either having to super pivot or absolutely change what they're doing. And most of these articles kind of show that, yeah, banking in general is really just trying to figure out, are we really going to have to pivot, or we have to spend all this money to change what we're doing? And they're
it makes more sense. It's probably cheaper to put out a bunch of articles against crypto, right? If you think about it, like if you're just a bank, you're sitting there and they're like, do we fix everything, or do we like hire PR guys to put out a bunch of anti-crypto articles? I think this is way easier. It's easier to destroy than to build something.
Yeah, exactly. Much cheaper as well. Not taking time to learn about BTC is Europe's biggest risk, says Belgian MP. All right. Way to go, Belgian MP. What do you think?
Yeah, listen, I think it's great when politicians. This guy seems to be a true believer. Seems to be really into crypto himself. As sort of a bit of a maybe even a DeFi degen. Who knows, right? But I think it's great when these politicians take a liking to crypto, because then that these things can happen. Like, a lot of policy really happens to do with like who's in charge. Like, you can't separate those things, right? Like, look at Russia. It's like a very monolithic political system, right? So if they make crypto policy, that's going to be fully in line with what the head of government over there thinks. Like, similarly, you have places like El Salvador where they've got hugely pro crypto people in power. You see that same thing happening in Miami, like even in the United States, and then you see these changes. New York, I believe, is also getting into a bunch of crypto stuff again, because people in power seem to maybe privately have taken a liking to it, and really tend to see it interesting. I know that that's what happened with El Salvador, and even in South Africa. I know that like for a while the son of the current prime minister was really into crypto and was going to a bunch of conferences and things like that. And that that's doubtlessly going to have a positive impact on any sort of regulation that happens there. So I think it's great when these sort of things happen.
Absolutely. I think I'm trying to give this guy a shout out, but his name so it's Christophe de Bouclier, I think is the name. But shout out to Christophe. So yeah, he's definitely a BTC maximalist. It looks like, yeah, he might be a DeFi degen. Who knows? I think it's great. This is bound to happen regardless of what happens in the political sphere, because, well, people are people, politicians are people, and obviously people have different likes and dislikes. It just takes some time, I think, for people to get up enough courage to kind of tell people what they like, right? So finally, people coming out and saying what they like. I think he's right about a lot of points. They always still, again, media, man, they like to pull out. There's a quote that just doesn't sound the best for crypto, right? And of course, it had to make the article. So it says, this is a quote from Christoph: "If Europe doesn't get its hands dirty with cryptocurrency, then Asia or US will decide everything." I mean, getting your hands dirty kind of implies that there's a lot of dirt, but so if you take out hands dirty, like you said, I think he's right. At the end of the day, I hate to say it, but the US is probably going to decide most of what happens in terms of the Western world and how we regulate crypto, because they determine how we regulate pretty much everything else. The UK right behind them, and then the world kind of follows. So it's probably still going to happen. But I think the faster that the world gets involved in the conversation, you don't want someone to tell you what to do when you can't get involved in the conversation before they tell you what to do. I mean, I say this a lot, but if to push change or to effectuate change, to do so from inside is easy, because you got to change like the mind of one person and then it's done. But outside, you got to change the minds of like billions of people. And that's not easy. So yeah, you want to be in that conversation. You don't want to be left out. Whether you like it or not, you should be in the conversation to tell people you don't like it, but you have to be in the conversation.
Right. I mean, I think if there's one thing that we learned today, or that's been really apparent today, based off of the news stories that we looked at, it's that like there seems to be maybe economic benefit in pushing FUD, right? For various parties involved. And probably, and then of course, when the other side starts advertising, it's because they're desperate, right? It's like this double standard, and why that double standard exists is probably, again, in no small part due to the balance of power currently being on that side. Well, should it shift a little on this side, we might see a completely different, kind of propaganda. So I think that do not underestimate the power of propaganda. Is what the sum up of this shows. If
history repeats itself, which people say it rhymes, which to me sounds about the same thing, but whether it rhymes or repeats, we will get to a point where we start to see FUD about the banking system more than we see FUD about the crypto system. That's what we will get there, and we're inching our way there now. All right, we only have about 30 seconds, but I think we only have 2 topics, so maybe we can get through them both and go over by a minute or so here. Let's see. Wormhole hack illustrates danger of cross-chain bridges. So yeah, what do you think, Jason? Have you? I'm sure you heard about the wormhole hack.
Yeah. I mean, at
Early
Luna's
February.
partnered in Sphere Finance, which is a cross chain bridge. And one of the things about it's like every day we hear, sort of these hacks of cross chain bridges. I mean, that's probably one of the most risky areas of the whole DeFi landscape in the first place. I was talking to a guy, an entrepreneur that actually got his smart contract audited by, I would say, somebody who a firm that's well known to be in the top one or two
Yeah.
firms for auditing. I think it comes up into your head instantly when I say that. So I won't, but and apparently he literally he injected code in there that was just to
If
see if
they
they
find,
catch it, and they did it.
yeah,
And they'd spent like tens of thousands of dollars, and I mean several tens of thousands, like somewhere in the neighborhood of like 50 to 80K
yeah,
to run this audit, and it wasn't caught. This seems to happen even in some what do you call it, launch pads and stuff. You have some. So I think that, yeah, I mean, yes, it's dangerous, and I wonder what, if there's going to be some sort of uniformity over time about how these bridges are built, in a sense that they can be better audited. For example, it's all about audits, I think.
yeah, exactly. I mean, look, all nuanced technology is always going to break, and people are going to find ways to break it until eventually that nuanced technology becomes more of a standard, and then it's very difficult to break. And people, but criminals are always going to find a way to steal money. So, and they're going to find the weakest link. So, I think this is kind of a bump in the road. And yes, sometimes they're big bumps. This was what $375 million worth of ether when it was taken. Slightly less now. I guess that doesn't make anybody feel any better, but yeah. So these things are going to happen. I think Vitalik saying something like keeping your native ETH on ETH and your native Solana on Solana is probably the safest bet, and he's probably right. But at the same time, at the end of the day, these things will get more secure. And there's even bridges now that, like, for instance, we at CoinMetro run a centralized bridge for Cadena. So you can come and get wrapped Cadena or eventually or soon, very soon, wrapped assets on Cadena's protocol through a centralized fiat on an off ramp. So there isn't this decentralized, or there is no. Of course, centralized exchanges can still get hacked. We all know that. But it does reduce some of that. Some of the issues that are currently being faced by more decentralized bridges, or more bridges that are kind of out in the wild, which again will be fixed at some point. I can guarantee you that there's a lot of money at stake. People will fix those issues. Okay, last one. Let's see what we got. Banning Bitcoin in Russia is the same as banning the internet, minister says. So yeah, I don't have a name on this minister, but what do you think, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, so Russia has been, so we know that the central bank in Russia has been really hostile to crypto, and has been try to everything possible to shut it down. But that's not, again, not unusual. Maybe we even touched on this, I think, a couple of weeks ago. It's not unusual for governments in general. Like within every government that seems to be having this internal debate in crypto, there's oftentimes like a fight over who gets to regulate it, right? And because it has the word currencies in there, that gives like central banks to sort of like go ahead to go, hey, wait a second, it's ours, it's us, it's on us, right? And then their version of the SEC or the Commodities Trading Commission, CFTC, for example, whatever versions of them that they have in those respective countries, they say no, it's an asset, it's a commodity, so that falls under us. We get to regulate it, right? And the ones that whenever this sort of tug of war happens, it always seems like this the commodity side of it is a lot more open to regulation, in a positive regulation, as opposed to the other side of it, which would be more in terms of wanting to just sort of like ban it outright, which makes sense though, obviously, because it's literally a threat to specifically what they're doing. It's a threat to their money. It's like if it's a currency and these guys are in charge of currency, they're like, wait a second, how do we get a hold of, like, who do we get a hold of to complain about that? So I mean, but Russia is. It seems like there might be some dissent in Russia, which I suppose is good. We'll see how it plays out, though. Hopefully, it's not fully monolithic. Like maybe they have that same sort of tug of war, and maybe their finance ministry might step in. Who knows? We'll see.
I think it's interesting that Ukraine, now that they're about to supposedly, well, Western media is definitely saying they're about to get invaded by Russia, that they just out of nowhere decided to make cryptocurrency legal, as if they're like, well, we're going to get invaded anyway, so it's not like we're going to have to do anything about this. So let's just go ahead and knock this one off the, let's get this one out of the way.
Well, you think it has something to do with funding? You think it has something to do with like them trying to be able to get a bunch of funding into Ukraine and like making that much easier?
I had the same thought. I mean, why not? I mean, they did it so fast. I mean, imagine kind of you have all these rumors about getting invaded, and I mean, why would that be the first thing? Why would that make news?
Yeah, I know. Exactly. Like, rush on your door. You're like, okay, do we legalize cryptocurrency?
Yeah. But anyway, I think this minister's comment is right. I mean, they tried to ban the internet. Decentralized systems in any way, shape, or form are impossible, literally, to ban. Somebody will find a way, whether it's through a Chinese firewall or, whether it's through whatever, to get involved in decentralized systems. So, and they're just missing out. I mean, if what they usually cite is true, which is we don't want people to lose their money, we don't want people to get defrauded, it's too high risk, and we want to protect our citizens, then the only way to do that is to regulate it. If you ban it, then the citizens will still get involved. And if that's your care, that, oh my God, my citizens may lose money, they're still going to lose it. But if you regulate it, you have a chance of at least, mitigating that loss. So those two arguments don't make any sense. And eventually, you get to the point where either they stop using those arguments or they regulate rather than ban.
Okay.
So, yeah. Anyway, we got to 36 minutes this week, so we went a little bit over, but who cares, I guess, at the grand scope of things. So thank you, Jason. This has been Crypto Connoisseurs. This is sponsored by Block Leaders. Check out blockleaders.io for some really cool crypto-related content. And see you guys here in 2 weeks.
Before we go, let's just give a quick shout out to some of the people. Jack Gill, we got to your question about Ukraine a bit. Matthews and Drake, thanks for joining y'all, and join us next time.
Thanks for seeing that, Jason. Appreciate it. See you guys here in 2 weeks. Cheers.